Well, welcome, friends. Today we'd like to share with you about Turkey and Bible prophecy. And we as Seventh-day Adventists, we have a very instrumental topic here and found in Revelation chapter 9. And in the early uh, days of our movement, there's a man by the name of Josiah Litch. Josiah Litch was studying Revelation chapter 9, and he came across two time prophecies. And these two time prophecies are found in Revelation chapter 9, verse 5, and Revelation 9, verse 15. Within the context of Revelation 9, Josiah Litch made a prediction in 1838. In 1838, this man made the prediction that something would happen to the Ottoman Empire in the year 1840. Later, he pinned that date specifically to August 11th, 1840. And to us as Seventh-day Adventists, as an extension of the Reformation and the Protestant reformers, God gave this man special insight that no one had specifically into the intricacies of this. And what this man did is, with him and the Millerites, when they made this prediction, they put this in the newspapers throughout. And when this event came to pass, the people that scoffed him and mocked him now became believers in the God of heaven and the God of the Bible. They were infidels. There was over 1,000 people that took up the Bibles as believers for the first time from this prediction. So we'd like to share with you some today the specifics of these time prophecies, and then also in Revelation chapter 9. So that was the base. Revelation chapter 9, these two time prophecies is what created the base, and it created a foundation for people to trust the William Millerites and the early Seventh-day Adventist pioneers. So what that did is it established the day for year principle. So in August 11th, in August 11th, 1840, when the Millerites made this prediction, and it happened, and it came to pass, these people said, these are the people of God. And then the Millerites were now predicting within a few short years, 1843 and then later 1844, that Jesus was coming back again. So all of the people put their trust in these men because of the prediction found in Revelation 9. And that established the day for year principle. And it said that these people have an understanding of Bible prophecy. So with that being said, we're going to turn to our next slide there. And I want to show you something here of what the Millerites did. So in on the screen there to your left, we have the 1843 chart. And on the right, we have the 1850 chart. And what these men did is they took the prophecies from William Miller and Litch, they put them on a chart form and added the pictures to it. And this is what they used when they went from town to town or city to city when they gave their lectures. But you'll find on the 1843 chart, you'll see in the bottom right-hand corner, you will see a Arab Saracen, you'll see the woman riding the beast, and you'll see an Ottoman Turkish Muslim man on horse. And as you can see, there's angels around them. These angels were God's angels directing and sending the Muslims to tell them to bring judgment upon the apostate power, that woman that's riding the beast, who we know today as the Roman Catholic Church. On the right-hand chart, the 1850 chart, you'll see from 3/4 of the way up on the right-hand side, you'll see an angel. You'll see that same Arab Saracen or Muslim, and you'll see the Ottoman Turks with the angels underneath that. This is what the early Seventh-day Adventist Church taught about Islam and Turkey and Bible prophecy. So this was a foundational belief of our church. And we'll show you something here on the next slide. On the next slide, we're going to show you the prophecies concerning Revelation chapter 9. So what you have here in Revelation chapter 9, you have Revelation chapter 9, verse 5. We're going to go at the top there. And then Revelation 9:15 underneath it. There it talked about that these locusts were to hurt these people who had not the seal of God in their foreheads. So Revelation 9:5 talks about that they should hurt these people and torment them for 5 months. Now, this is prophetic time. So, what Josiah Litch did is he took 5 months times 30 days in a month, and he came up to 150 or 150 years. And then in Revelation 9, verse 15, it talks about that it should be for an hour, a day, a month, and a year. So if you look directly underneath that, in prophetic time, an hour equals 15 days, a day equals a year, a month equals 30 years, and a year equals 360 years. So what Josiah Litch did is he added that up. He added the 15 days, the 1, the 30, and the 360, and he came up to 391 years and 15 days. Now, what I want to share with you, my friends, is in Revelation 9:5, the starting date for that time prophecy was a specific battle called Nicomedia. That battle started on the day of July 27th, 1299. And then Josiah Litch added the 150-year time prophecy to that, and he came up with July 27th, 1449. Then what Josiah Litch did is he took and added the time prophecy from Revelation 9:15. So he took the starting date of July 27th, 1449, and he added 391 years. So just to the right there underneath the map of Turkey, you'll see 1449 plus 391 years, and he came up with the year 1840. If we could turn back, okay, thank you. He came up with the year 1840. And then, so that was the point of July 27th, 1840. Then what he did is he added the 15 days. So he added 15 days to July 27th. So you got July 27th, 28th, 29, 30, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And it came to August 11th, 1840. August 11th, 1840, the prediction and statement that they made came true to the exact year and day. And that was the foundation of Seventh-day Adventism. So you'll see here that Turkey was in prophecy. And when we're sharing with our Muslim friends, this is a chapter that we could share with them specifically of how God used them to bring judgment upon an apostate power, but also he used that same power to protect and preserve the Protestant Reformation. Because at that time, you had the reformers, and the Pope was wanting to destroy them. When the Pope was wanting to come to Luther and cut his throat, so to speak, and to destroy him, that's when the Turks came upon the scene, and God used them as a deliverer. So we'll turn to our next slide here. You're going to find something very interesting. This here is a timeline in reference to Revelation chapter 9. So on the far left, we have the name of Jesus in Arabic, which is Isa. 321 is when Constantine changed the day of worship from Saturday to Sunday. And then we've got the year 538. 538 is when the Pope, you could say, took his position as complete ruler. So we've got the Roman Catholic Church, the 3.5 prophetic years, or the Dark Ages, that the Roman Catholic Church would rule. So underneath this time period, Revelation 9 is discussing. When you read Revelation 9 verses 19 and 20, it talks about these men worshiping devils, worshiping idols of gold and silver and stone, which can neither see nor hear nor walk. So here's, you have this power, and then in another verse it talks about that this group of people with their murders and their thefts and their fornication. So this is referring to the Catholic Church because the murders was upon the reformers. It's thefts, stealing the people's money and offering suggested prayer for them. And then the fornication, where not only did they molest and rape the young boys, but they also took the nuns. So if you look at the timeline just underneath that, you've got the numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4. This is the first 4 trumpets that the Bible talks about. So you could see here that the trumpets were judgments that were commanded and executed by God because the church went into apostasy. And you could see how close that is to the year 321. So God gave years, and then he decided to take it in his hands that he would execute judgment upon these pagans taking the professed name of Jesus. Then on the timeline, we've got the blue dot. The blue dot represents Muhammad and when he was born. Muhammad was born in 570. Look how close that is to the year 538. It's very close. So God raised up Muhammad and Islam for a specific reason. And we'll get into that in a little bit later here. But you'll see that on the timeline, there's the fifth trumpet and the sixth trumpet and the seventh trumpet. These trumpets are also called woes. So the first woe is the fifth trumpet, the second woe is the sixth trumpet, and the third woe is the seventh trumpet. So here in the context of this timeline, God raised up, you could see in 622, the Arab Saracens. They were to bring judgment upon the power of the Roman Catholic Church. And then later we have the Ottoman Turks. And then we've got the third woe, which I would suggest that if Islam was used in the first and second woe, why would not God use Islam in the third woe in the time period that we're going into? So we're going to show you what's on the next slide here. I want to read to you from Revelation chapter 9, verse 4, because we're going to get into the description of Revelation 9 now. We looked at the time prophecy specifically, but not many people in Seventh-day Adventism actually look at what's going on in Revelation 9. So the theme here is the Catholic Church is in power. It's killing the Protestants. And then Revelation 9:4 is talking about, and it was commanded them, this is referring to the locusts, that they should not hurt the grass of the earth, neither any green thing, neither any tree, but only those men which have not the seal of God in their foreheads. So here, these locusts, normally locusts are hurting everything that's green, but here they're told to hurt one thing, the men who have not the seal of God in their foreheads. Now, on the right hand of this slide, you're going to see a name by the name of Abu Bakr. So this, we're talking about the time period where Muhammad was born. He's now dead. Abu Bakr is now second on the scene. So here's a Muslim man, and look at what the command was given him. It says, this command was given to him by God. It says, when you fight the battles of the Lord, acquit yourselves like men, without turning your backs. Let not your victory be stained with the blood of women and children. Destroy no palm trees, nor burn any fields of corn. Cut down no fruit trees, nor do any mischief to cattle, only such as you eat. So here, look at how that correlates with Revelation 9:4. Revelation 9:4, the locusts were not to touch anything of the earth. Abu Bakr's statement was the same thing, that when the Muslims were to go to war, they were to leave the earth and the things of it alone, and they were to go after a specific group of men. It continues on. It says, when you make any covenant or article, stand to it. Be as good as your word, and as you go, you will find some religious persons who live retired in monasteries and propose to themselves to serve God that way. Let them alone. Neither kill them nor destroy their monasteries. And then it gives the other half. And you will find another sort of people that belong to the synagogue of Satan, who have shaven crowns. Be sure to cleave their skulls and give them no quarter till they either turn Mohammedans or pay tribute. On our next slide, I'm going to show you a picture because it talked about a group of people that belong to the synagogue of Satan, and they had shaven crowns. Here, Abu Bakr was given a command specifically by God that when they went to go slaughter and kill people, that they were to go after a group of people, which you could see in the picture here was the monks or the Catholics and their shaven crowns. So the Muslims went specifically after a certain group of people. Our next slide here, you may ask the question, well, how do you know in Revelation chapter 9 that the locusts refer to the Muslims? In Judges chapter 6, it talks about, I'm not going to open the Bible and read it, but I'm just going to give you a quick description. You could read about it in Judges chapter 6, verses, I believe, 1 through 8. It says that when the children of Israel did evil in the sight of the Lord, that the Lord delivered them into the hand of Midian and the children of the east. The children of the east here, it says that they came up as grasshoppers or locusts with their camels and their tents. In Genesis 25, it talks about that Abraham gave all that he had to Isaac, and it said that the other children, which would have been from Keturah and Hagar, Ishmael and their lineage, that they were sent to the east. In the Bible, the Muslims or Ishmael's lineage is considered the children of the east, and they're noted here in Judges chapter 6 as locusts. And today, when you think of locusts, the native land for the locust is coming from the Arabian desert. So here, God, just like when we look at the Daniel 2 image, you got Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome, God uses symbolic language for a group of people from the Middle East, and he notes that as the locusts. So everywhere in the Bible, when you find locusts and it's symbolic, it's referring to the Muslim people. Our next slide here, I want to show you is just in context of the 1850 chart. So normally when we talk about the Daniel 2 image there, we talk about the 10 toes, which refers to the 10 divisions of Western Rome, the 3 horns that were uprooted by the papacy. But here is during the time period when Muhammad was born. So when the Pope is on his throne, so to speak, this is the time when Muhammad was born. And the reason why I share this is because when you share with Muslims, you want to share where Muhammad was in a timeline. So Muslims believe that Muhammad was the last prophet before the judgment. Now, when we think of the judgment, when did the judgment start? It started in 1844. Now, you and I know as Seventh-day Adventists, there's another prophet or prophetess called Ellen G. White. So the Muslims believe that Muhammad was a prophet before the judgment. So you could use that statement as a true statement to show where Muhammad's at on the timeline, and he was given the Quran. You see, the confusion that comes in today is people think that Islam was created by Roman Catholicism. You're going to find out in the presentation here as we continue on that there's no such fact to that. So the Quran was actually given to Muhammad to speak against the Roman Catholic power and its teachings. So you see there on the timeline 538, 570 was when Muhammad was born, given the Quran, and the Quran was given to speak against these people group within the 1260 time period. Our next slide is going to share something with you. And this comes from the 7-day weekly cycle found in Arabic. You could see here, and you may ask the question, well, how do the Muslims know who to kill? How do they know who to go after? Well, here in the seventh day format here, you can see that Sunday is called the first day in Arabic. It's written there in Arabic. Second day is Monday, third is Tuesday, Wednesday is the fourth, Thursday is the fifth, and then there's something interesting here on Friday. Friday is called El Juma. El Juma is when the Muslims gather. They gather every Friday for prayer. But I want you to think of the story of the Israelites in the wilderness. What day did they gather bread on? What day were they commanded to go out and to grab a double portion, which was Friday, the gathering day? So here in the Arabic language, it's all set up for us, the truths that we hold today. And then we've got Saturday. Saturday in the Arabic language is called Asabt. It's called the day of rest. Here, God designed that this people group would have an understanding within their own language to understand the truths. Now, today you may say, why don't Muslims keep the Sabbath? Well, a lot of it's just like you and I. A lot of us came from different Christian backgrounds, maybe not even Christian. Through time, people have forgotten. Through time, people have picked tradition and other belief system. The same thing has happened to our Muslim friends. Imams and others have classified that Sabbath is only a day of rest for the Jews. It's not for anyone else. But we will find in the Quran that that is not so. So our next slide is going to share a verse from the Quran about the Sabbath. This comes from Surah 4, verse 47. Remember, Revelation 9:4, the locusts or the Muslims, the Arabs, were to hurt those who had not the seal of God on their foreheads. They were to go after the Catholics. And why were they to go after the Catholics? Remember, the Catholic Church changed the day of worship from Sabbath, a Sabt in Arabic, to the first day of the week. The Quran here states, O people of the book, Believe in what we have now revealed, confirming what was already with you, before we change the face and fame of some of you beyond all recognition and turn them hindwards or curse them as we curse the Sabbath breakers. For the decision of Allah or God must be carried out. So here we got a picture of the Catholic priests, and what did they do? They turned their back on what the Bible says. And here the Quran says that the Muslims were to go after those who were cursed and who broke the Sabbath. And it says that why was that so? Because the decision of God must be carried out. So there's a specific reason in why the Muslims knew what to do. One, they knew because of their leader, Muhammad, and what he was given through the Quran, the statement made by Abu Bakr, the second in command. And then as they continue in reading other things within the Quran, you will see there's specifics as to why they went after this group of people. Okay, our next slide. This is what the Quran says in fighting Christians. Notice what it says here in 929. It says, fight those who believe not in Allah nor the last day, nor hold that forbidden, which hath been forbidden by Allah and his messenger, nor acknowledge the religion of truth, even if they are the people of the book, until they pay jizya with will and submission and feeling themselves subdued. So here it says, fight those who believe not in God nor the last day. Now, one thing I want you to remember is this. Catholicism was a mix of pagans and taking the name Christian. Today, there's actually groups out there that I would consider pagan. There's a group out here that I met not too long ago. They believe in God the Mother. Now, when you go back to tradition, in paganism, they believe that there's God the Father, God the Mother, and God the Son. This group of people is claiming to be Christian. They believe the Sabbath, but they believe in God the Mother. And what the Quran is saying is fight those who believe not in Allah nor the last day. The Bible states clearly what the last day is. The last day is, Jesus says that he would what? He would raise that man up on the last day, resurrection day, the second coming. So when I want you to think of Catholics, do they believe in the last day? No. Other Christian groups? No. In order to believe in the last day, you have to believe in the judgment, the way we do as Seventh-day Adventists. You have to believe in the 1,000 years, millennium, and then you have to believe in the second coming and that the dead are not resurrected until the second coming. That is the last day. And then the verse reads on. We'll go back to our screen there. Nor hold that which is forbidden. That would include drinking alcohol, eating pork, all of these things that the Roman Catholic Church teaches. So here the Quran's given us specific. And then in Surah 3, 1, 13, and 14, beneath that, it says this. This is what the Quran says. It says, not all of them are alike. Of the people of the book, there's a portion that stand for the right. They rehearse the signs of Allah all night long, and they prostrate themselves in adoration. They believe in Allah and the last day. They enjoin what is right. They forbid what is wrong, and they hasten in emulation in all good works. And that says they are in the ranks of the righteous. So not only does the Quran speak about a group of the people of the book, Jews and Christians that believe what is right, but this verse here could actually be spoken about you and I as Seventh-day Adventists today at the end of time. Because why? We believe in prostrating to God. We believe in what the book says. We forbid what drinking and alcohol and the other things that are stated in the book. So here it says that they're in the ranks of the righteous. Here, the Quran is stating that you and I, are, as believers, are in the ranks of the righteous. And the question is posed when you talk to a Muslim is what is needed to enter the kingdom of God, or what they believe is paradise or Jannah, and it is to be righteous. That's the obsolete, that is the standard. And how do we get that? As you and I know, only through Jesus. But that is something that we could share with them as we further. Our next slide shares something that I want to share with you. If you look at the top there, it's got the number 538. 538 and to the right, it says Papal Rome. Okay, that's the 10-horned beast with the little horn coming up. Now we're going to read what it says underneath the number 606. It says, the rise of Mohammedanism. This power stood not up against the Prince of Princes. That's referring to Michael or Jesus, because it did not exist until this period of Revelation 9:1, and it says the star that fell. You see, this power here of Islam was risen up at a later time period. So there you've got the Roman Catholic Church, you've got the beast and the woman referring to the church, and then the upper right hand of that, you got the Arab Saracens or the Mohammedans. Here, the Seventh-day Adventists taught clearly that it was two distinct powers. And today within Christendom, and what I believe is actually happening with the Daniel 11 viewpoint that Turkey is the king of the north, is that view is actually making Islam the Antichrist power. And when you talk to Christianity today, I just talked to a gentleman the other day, and we're sharing these charts, and he goes, I believe that Islam's the Antichrist. You see, the devil is trying to get us to misunderstand and to continue with who the Antichrist power is. And these charts are endorsed heavily by Ellen G. White. There's so many endorsements on these charts, and these are the charts that will keep the foundations and the bearings of God's people to the end of time and to help them in showing the rest of the world of the great war that's ahead of us yet, because we still have the third woe. And I believe that the third woe is also talking about the verses of Daniel 11, and you're looking at verses 40 through 45. So this would correlate in the third woe time period. Our next slide, I want to share something of what the Quran says in accordance with the Bible. So Revelation 9:20, this is referring to the Roman Catholics, it says, and the rest of the men which were not killed by these plagues, yet repented not of the works of their hands, that they should not worship devils and idols of gold and silver and brass and stone and of wood, which can neither see nor hear nor walk. Note what the Quran says here in Surah 4:117, referring to the people of the book, certain people. They even worship female gods besides him. As a matter of fact, they only worship a rebellious devil. So here, when you think of a Muslim, you think of back in time when they went to go to war. How did they know who went to war? Because there's a whole group of people bowing and submitting to images of the Virgin Mary, images of Jesus, concrete, stone, wood, all sorts of images. Here, the Quran states specifically that they're involved in devil worship. And same thing for this group today that believes in worshiping God the Mother. The Quran would be specifically for that issue too. So the Quran, you may wonder, how do Muslims know what to do? One, they know because of the way they're raised and they're told not to do these things. Two, they know by the Quran. And then three, as we as Seventh-day Adventists, as we come to educate Muslims as to what the Bible says, because today when you talk to Muslims, they say your Bible's corrupted. The reason why they say that is because they see they see Catholics and the false worship and the belief system that they have, and so they believe this Bible must be changed, that it must be wrong. And a Muslim today is scared to open this Bible. They will take texts online. They will take people within their own faith that are evangelists, just like with us in Seventh-day Adventism or any other belief. They'll take people that have looked at things, taken what they want, and run with it, and they will use those things. But they won't look at the book itself, the rest of it. Okay, on our next slide, we'd like to share with you something. And this is Revelation chapter 9. We're going to read the verse here, and we're going to look at what the Seventh-day Adventists did when they put this on the chart. Revelation chapter 9, verse 7 talks about the shapes of the locusts were like unto horses prepared unto battle. And on their heads were as it were crowns like gold, and their faces were as the faces of men. So you got to remember that John is having a vision of this war, and this war is coming centuries later. And this is the vision that he's seen. He's seen the locusts. So he's describing the locusts as what? Horses. Here's a picture of the Mohammedans or the Arab Saracens. Today, when you look at the majority of the world and you talk in the horse community, what is the best horse to have? The Arabian horse. The Arabian horses were actually used by the Muslims during this time period. So the Muslims, when they're living in their tents, these Bedouins, they would actually have baby colts that they would raise in the tents. These children would play with them. They would sleep with them. These horses were like what you and I would hold today as a cat or a dog within our homes. These horses became so familiar with the family. And it talks about, you could read, one of the things that you could do to read on this is you could read the book by James White on the fifth and sixth trumpet, Islam and Bible prophecy. I can't remember the name of the title, but I know it talks about the trumpets. And he talks about these things. So we'll go back to the slide if you would, please. But it says here that they had gold crowns. So back then, that was the dress that the Muslim had. Now today, when you go to a mosque or a Muslim, they still wear things on their heads. They still wear the little, well, they called it a turban here. It's not what they call it, but they still wear these things on their heads today. So here the Bible was given a complete description of the Muslims. And then as you'll note there, that angel that's directing the Muslims to war. You see, today many people think that the devil was commanding Islam to war. But when you read in the Bible, when you read about the seven trumpets, the seven angels stand where? They stand before God. They're waiting before God. So just like you're in the military, you stand before your sergeant, the one in command, and you wait for commands to be given to you before you go and execute them. These angels were the God's angels of heaven, and they were announcing and commanding the Muslims to go to war. But when they went to war, they had to make specific clarifications on who they were going for. Just like you find in Ezekiel and other parts of the Bible. You see, when they were commanded, they were commanded to hurt those who were involved in false worship, those who were not walking in the ways of God. Our next slide, please. Our next slide, we're going to talk about the sixth trumpet and the second woe, and it reads this. Revelation 9:13 says, "And the sixth angel sounded, and I heard a voice from the four horns of the golden altar which is before God, saying to the sixth angel which had the trumpet, loose the four angels which are bound in the great river Euphrates." So here on our next slide, we're going to show you something about the sixth angel. Remember, the command was coming from where? The command was coming from the four horns of the golden altar, which is before God. Okay? So I want to pose the thought to you, for those of you that have been studying the sanctuary, and we know that just through the sanctuary is the plan of salvation. We also know that it's like a timeline. Let me explain. We know about Jesus' death and resurrection. So when Jesus resurrected, he resurrected in what year? AD 31. AD 31 is when he entered the heavens. So when you look at this chart here and you look at the temple or the sanctuary, Jesus entered that sanctuary on what day or what year? AD 31. And he entered into the holy place where the four horns and the golden altar is. Okay? You and I know as Seventh-day Adventists through prophecy, the cleansing of the sanctuary and the 2300 days found in Daniel 8:14, that Jesus moved from the holy to the most holy place, right? So this gives us a description of time. If you were to take and you're cutting that sanctuary in half where the line is above the four horns, you could say that 1844 and onwards to the top of the temple there is referring to that time period. So Revelation 9 verse 15 is a description of this command. It's given us a time of the year. It has to be before the year 1844. To those that want to say that the sixth trumpet is in the future, you are considered a futurist, one, compared to the sanctuary and time prophecies. But here, look at where the command's coming from. To those that want to teach at Revelation chapter 9 is of Satan and the devil, why is the command coming from heaven? The command is coming from God Almighty to his son Jesus, from Jesus to the angel, from the angel to the Muslims. This is the direction that God is doing to the sanctuary. Our next slide. Our next slide here is giving us a description of the Ottoman Turks on that chart. You'll notice that God's angel is directing these Turks, and underneath it, you'll notice it says firearms and what was coming out of it. And we're going to read what the scriptures say here, but one thing I want to share with you, you'll see at the bottom of that horse says the Ottoman supremacy ceased. Remember, we had shared with you about how Josiah Litch made a prediction that something was going to happen in 1840, that the Ottoman Empire would cease, specifically August 11th. They put that on this chart. This chart shares with you that the Ottoman Empire and supremacy of it ceased and is never, ever to be again a world power. It is finished. In August 11th, 1840, the Ottomans, they submitted to the four great Christian powers, and they are still submitted to the Christian nations in power today. It is not a power of its own. Yes, there's Muslims there, but you will note it still belongs to the United Nations, and it's no longer a power of its own. So it has no authority to go into the so-called Middle East and take over the temple and rule as many thoughts are being stated. Our next slide. Our next slide is going to share with Revelation 9:17. Revelation 9:17 is describing the description that John's seen of these Ottoman Turks. It says, "And thus I saw the horses in vision, and them that sat on them, having breastplates of fire and jacinth and brimstone, and the heads of the horses were as the heads of lions, and out of their mouths issued fire and smoke and brimstone." So you got to remember, when John's having a vision of this, he's viewing that these horses have fire coming out of their mouth, okay? It's not actual fire coming out of the horse's mouth. So I want you to think, for those of you that have ever ridden a horse, and normally when you ride a horse, you've got your hands, you got your feet in the stirrups, you got your hands up there on the reins, and you're pretty much riding straight up. You got some give in your back and your knees to ride with the horse. But these Muslims, these Ottoman Turks, when they were riding, when they're going to kill, they had muskets in their hands. So they were actually bending over down on the horse to keep their body tight to the horse. As they raise their muskets, their barrels are just sticking out before the faces of the horse's head. And as they shoot, obviously when you shoot, if you've ever shot a gun at nighttime, you see the flaming colors come out. What John saw was, he saw the Ottoman Turks shooting, and it looked like the horses. So here, God has given us a description of the Ottoman Turks and the war that they were doing. Our next slide, please. This here, which you're seeing on the far left, is a helmet and a shield of a horse at the Ottoman Turks. You could see there in the bottom of that shield, that's referring to an Ottoman Turkish warrior. Now, to find the proof of this, if you go to Istanbul, Turkey today, this stuff is all found in the museum. So those of you that are in Europe, you have the opportunity to go see this firsthand. The things that we're talking about in Revelation chapter 9 are found in the Topkapi Palace. God left proof of Revelation 9. So here, as you look at that shield and that mask for the horse, you could see where the eyes were cut out. That's so the horse could see. And then at the top, you could see where they had a protection for the horse's ears, where they would stick out. And then to the right, you've got a grasshopper or a locust. Take a look at how the Ottoman Turkish shield for the horse looks just like a locust or grasshopper head. Exactly the same. God was specific and distinctive in this war and what was stated. Brothers and sisters, there's absolutely no way to teach anything else than that Revelation chapter 9 was the Arab Saracens and the Ottoman Turks. They were God's deliverance to the Protestants and a judgment to the Catholics. And to hold that Revelation 9 is the devil himself is to deny the God of heaven. Because here God used this army. He talks about in Joel chapter 2, the locust. It says his army. We're going to find out what William Miller said to that in a future read here. Our next slide. Remember, we talked about in Revelation 9, it talked about the four messengers, or the four angels. It says the four angels in the Euphrates River. Here on the map, you can see the Euphrates River there on the right-hand side. You see four dots. These 4 dots were these 4 angels or messengers. They were the 4 caliphates, the 4 caliphs. These came after Othman, and these were the leaders that now were to move from this area, from Aleppo, Damascus, Baghdad, and Iconium. They were to go up. They were to go north, and they were to go up to the area there of Constantinople, and they were to bring war. And we'll turn to our next slide, please. This here is some of the weapons that the Ottoman Turks used. You can find this again in the Topkapi Palace. You can see the swords, the shields, the armor, and at the bottom you see the muskets. You see, God gave specifically this group of people muskets. They were the first ones with gunpowder and to have muskets, and this is how they won the war. And we're going to share on the next slide something fascinating. Now I want you to think of these weapons. So here what you see is the Ottoman Turkish growth map. You could see, I won't go into details, but you could see how the Ottoman Turks moved into North Africa and Egypt. They went all the way up into the northern tip of Africa and Spain. They moved up into the European area there. And this was the map would show. So I want you to think if you were in Martin Luther's day and you're up there in Germany, and you nail in the 95 Thesis, and the Pope's wanting you dead, and here comes a military might from the south coming up to bring judgment on the Pope. Okay, our next slide. Next slide I want to share with you. This is an interesting picture here. I was with a friend of mine, JL, here quite a few years ago. We made a trip to California. On this trip, we were hoping to share with Muslims and share some things, and we came across a building that talked about a history building. And I told my friend JL, I says, let's just go in by chance. Maybe there's something in there about the Islamic stuff that we've been studying and wanting to know. We go in there, and this is what we found. This gentleman was an antique guy, and here he's holding one of the very weapons that were used during the time of Martin Luther. I want you to think of that gun, my friends. I'm not one to hold a gun anymore, believe in wanting to hold a gun or kill. But I want you to think how God had given the Muslims the ability to take down this Antichrist power. God had to do something drastic, and that drastic is actually what saved the Protestants. Okay, our next slide. This here's a picture of the cannons that the Ottoman Turks used. You could see there they're packing the cannons. It doesn't give a complete picture of what these cannons were like, but you could read this in James White's writings. And he talks about these cannons that the inside of the barrel was 15 palms wide, 15 palms wide. So if you get a chance, try that on your floor or the wall. Basically, it's about eight or 9 feet from what I can tell. These cannonballs weighed anywhere from 600 to 1,200 pounds. They used rock, they used metal, they used anything they could to form them. And these are the cannons that were used to bring down the walls of Constantinople. So here, when you look at these cannons weighed a ton. I forgot to mention too that Rome actually had the ability to have this cannon first, and they didn't take it. Then the man that created this cannon went to the Muslims. He went to the Ottoman Turks. They took it, and it was by God's providence. So what they did is when they're bringing these cannons, you could read that they used 14 batteries of these. They lined them up around Constantinople. 14 of these, they lined them up 1 mile's distance away. And they shot these cannons, and these balls would fly through the air, and that's what brought down the walls of Constantinople. But it also talks about that when they were bringing these cannons, how heavy they were. I believe it took, I'd have to look at my notes, I believe it was 32 oxen. They took many wagons. It took like 32 oxen, 200 men that were on the sides of these cannons, because the cannon's on the wagon's tippy, you think if you're traveling to war. And they had 200 men on each side with ropes holding this cannon from falling off the wagons. They had about 250 men that were going before the wagon. They were clearing the land. They were, shovels, picks, whatever it had to be, because you had to go travel a long distance. So this wasn't an easy run for the Muslims of that time. There was a lot of sweat, there's a lot of time, and there's a lot of decided decision in what they were going to do. It wasn't like war today where you just pull something out and you fight. They actually had to travel. Okay, our next slide, please. This is what William Miller has to say about Revelation chapter 9. So it says, Revelation 9, third verse. There came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth. Unto them was given power as the scorpions of the earth have power. By these locusts I understand armies. See Joel's first and second chapters. Therefore I should read this text thus. There came out of these Mohammedan followers large armies, which should have great power to what? To execute the judgments of God on this anti-Christian beast, which had filled the earth with her abominations. And then the quote continues on our next slide. I may have, okay, fourth verse. It was commanded them, they should not hurt the grass of the earth, neither any green thing, neither any tree, but only those men which have not the seal of God in their foreheads. By grass, green things, trees, Psalm 72:16, Hosea 14:8, I understand the true church or people of God. By those men having not the seal of God, etc., I understand the anti-Christian church or papal Rome. Then this would be the sense. It was commanded them that they should not hurt the true church or people of God, but only the anti-Christian beast or powers subject to her. So here William Miller had done extensive study. And to come up with this study, my friends, when you look at what William Miller studied and what God gave that man, I have not found anything ever since in my studies that have been even close. When you look at other Christian denominations and the teachings that they have, you will find nothing close to what God gave William Miller. That man was led by God's angel, Ellen White says. Okay, on our next slide. This is what, this here's a picture of Martin Luther. You can see he's nailing the 95 Theses to the wall there of the church. I want to read something to you from the book called History of Protestantism by J.A. Wiley. This is what J.A. Wiley says. It says, when a crisis arose in the affairs of the Reformation, the kings obedient to the Roman see had united their swords to strike, and with blows so decisive that they should not need to strike a second time. The Turk, obeying one whom he knew not, would straightway present himself on the eastern limits of Europe, and in so menacing an attitude that the swords unsheathed against the poor Protestants had to be turned in another quarter. The Turk was the lightning rod that drew off the tempest. Thus did Christ cover his little flock with the shield of the Moslem. So here you see today, my friends, that it was actually Jesus himself that used the Muslim to protect his people. Martin Luther was a man of Jesus, and God sent the Muslims to protect and deliver him. Okay, our next slide is going to share something about Martin Luther. So I want you to take a look at that picture here. You've got Martin Luther and the Protestants there in the upper left-hand corner. And on the right side there, you've got the popes and the prelates. Notice how the popes are pointing at Martin Luther. They hated and despised this man because of what he taught and believed, because he broke off from the church and was sharing that his own church was in apostasy. It reads here, this comes from a History of Protestantism again. It is you, said the adherents of the old creed addressing the Lutherans. So that's the popes here addressing the Lutherans, who have brought this scourge upon us. It is you who has unleashed these angels of evil. They have come to chastise you for your heresy. You have cast off the yoke of the Pope, and now you must bear the yoke of the Turk. This is what Martin Luther is now going to say. Not so, said Luther. It is God who has unloosed this army, whose king is Abaddon the destroyer. They have been sent to punish us for our sins, our ingratitude for the gospel, our blasphemies, and above all, our shedding of the blood of the righteous. Martin Luther knew why the Muslims were being sent. They were being sent because the popes of what they were doing, what they were teaching, and what they were doing to society. Martin Luther knew. And then here it talks about Abaddon the destroyer. Revelation chapter 9, when it talks about Abaddon the destroyer, there's many that are saying, well, that's Satan, the fall of Lucifer. So in Revelation 9:1, it talks about a star falling from the heavens. When you read in this and you get into a study in it, the early Seventh-day Adventist church and all Protestant church groups once taught that that referred to Muhammad. Later, when you get into a study, you find out, you look up the word heaven. The word heaven there can mean sky or abode, and it also says if you got eastward, it means the gospel. So this messenger fell from the gospel. And then here it says in Revelation 9, later it talks about Abaddon and Apollyon the destroyer. This here in the context is referring to Othman in the Ottoman Empire. Othman was a destroyer. He was a destroyer of what? He was a destroyer of the apostate Christian called the Roman Catholic Church. That's what he was the destroyer of. And you and I, as Seventh-day Adventists today, owe thankfulness and gratitude to the God of heaven for using the Muslims. Because what happened is, as the Protestants were being slaughtered, as they were going into the mountains, as they were hiding in the strongholds, also later on, the Protestants fled where? They fled to the States, America. Today, I stand here in the United States of America as a Seventh-day Adventist. Forefathers of mine, so forth, came here because they wanted to worship without a king or a pope. And that ability was given because of the Muslims. They left the opportunity for these Protestants to live. Otherwise, they all would have been diminished. So today, Turkey, and another thing to note, there's a man by the name of Andrew Jones, a Seventh-day Adventist man. He does tours in Europe to Turkey, and he does tours to Saudi Arabia. When you look today, when you go to Turkey, you will find Noah's Ark, the remains of it, preserved. Preserved why? Because it's in a Muslim land. You will go to Saudi Arabia today, you can find the mountain of Moses, or Musa in Arabic, where Moses met God on the mountaintop. The mountaintop, the split rock, all of that is preserved by the Muslims. You think of our Bibles today, the Greek manuscripts, they were actually preserved from the Muslims in Egypt. We have a lot of history to owe to the Muslim people. Our Bible, Noah's Ark, the Mountain of Moses, Jebel Allah, as it's called. And there's much more. Our next slide, please. This comes from the Quran, Surah 566. It says, if only they had stood fast by the law, the gospel, and the revelation that was sent to them from their Lord, they would have enjoyed happiness from every side. There is from among them a party on the right course, but many of them follow a course that is evil. So here the Quran is stating that the people of the book are the Christians. The only way that we could stand fast is by the law and the gospel and the revelation or the Bible that was sent to us. My friends, we could actually teach from the Quran about the Sunday law. It's not as explicit as the Bible, but it's there. And our next slide to finish up, please, I believe. It says, I want to read the verse from the Quran about the Sabbath breakers, and I want to share with you, I don't have it on the slide, but there's 4 verses in the Quran that talk about Sabbath breaking. This comes from Surah 4, verse 47. This is why the Ottoman Turks, this is why the Ottoman Empire came, and this is why they warred against so-called what many consider Christianity. It says, O ye people of the book, believe in what we have now revealed, confirming what was already with you before we changed the face and fame of some of you beyond all recognition, and turn them hindwards or curse them, as we curse the Sabbath breakers, for the decision of Allah must be carried out. So here, friends, to conclude with the study, God raised up Ottoman, the Ottoman Turks, and the Arab Saracens. He gave them the book called the Quran. The Quran was given because these people could not get their hands on a Bible. You got to remember, within the Protestant Reformation, the Bible was burned. The Bible wasn't in the common people's hands till later, until they got a copy and started printing it and sharing it. The Quran was given to a group of people that needed to understand what this power was doing and to execute the judgments of God. So as we look at Turkey today, Turkey was a blessed land. And you could read also in Stephen Haskell's book, where it talks about the seven churches. The seven churches were desecrated, they were destroyed by the Muslim power. Why? Because they went into apostasy. So thank you for your time. May God be with you. And we look further to share with you other things about Turkey and Turkey and Bible prophecy and the Antichrist power, and what does the Bible have to say about the third woe and the Muslims. As the Muslims would say, Salam alaikum, God bless, and may God bless you in your studies.